Hello everyone, welcome to a new video on the channel. Today is the end of May reading update video that I'm sure some of you have been waiting for, and we have a total of I think 5 books to talk about today. In total for the month of May I read 11 books. I did however DNF 4 books this month, which was quite a large number than usual. I'll talk a tiny bit about them at the end, but let's just get straight into it. If you're new here, hello, my name is Shao. I like to share all about my book reading journey, and on this channel you'll see mostly my reading journal, which is this book here, but I also share reading updates, and I'm going to try and do a few little reading vlogs and stuff in the future. So if you like that idea, stick around, you might enjoy this video, and I'd love to have you join me in this journey as well. So the next book on the list that we didn't talk about in the last book, but is the next one that I finished, was the only physical book that I can show you today, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was my most anticipated romance read of the year, and I enjoyed it. It's definitely not as great as Book Lovers was last year, and I think because Book Lovers was so amazing that I was just assuming that this one would feel the same. I really enjoyed the way Emily Henry writes and how she presents obstacles and learning opportunities to her characters. So this follows 2 friends who ended up falling in love. They were engaged, and due to certain circumstances, they've known each other for 10 years I believe, they fell apart and they didn't tell anyone about it. It's been 5 months since they've separated, and their friends invite them to their happiest place in the world, which is this little seaside cottage. Well, it's actually quite a fancy place because the family that owns it is rich, and the main character turns up. What is her name? I can never remember. Harriet. Harriet turns up expecting it just to be her. She'd spoken to Wynne, who's the main male character, about not coming, and he's there, and they end up finding out some big truths about the place. 1, it's being sold at the end of summer, and 2, their friends are getting married at the end of the week. So of course they have to be there, but it's also just about reconnecting. This book goes through the past and the present. It's told in real life and Happy Place. And I really enjoyed the back and forth, learning about these characters, how they came together, how they fell in love, what makes them tick, and seeing those translate into the present time. It was really well done. However, I ended up giving this 4.5 stars because there was one issue I had with the book, and it was miscommunication trope was very prevalent, and whilst I'm not huge on it, if it's resolved well, I don't normally have a problem with it, but in this case it just dragged out. It doesn't take away from the read, so I definitely recommend this book still, but I got exasperated a lot towards the end. I was just like, just tell him, you know, getting frustrated. And it's a good reaction to have out of a book. I think that author has done really well to make us react to this book. But yes, the miscommunication just dragged out a little bit too long, but when it's resolved, it's done well, and that's why I gave it 0.5. I took 0.5 of a star off the overall score. So that is a little bit sad because I was expecting this to be still my favourite romance of the year, and it won't be. So the next book that I'm going to talk about is Shanghai Immortal. It is written by A.Y. Chow, and I had this as an e-arc. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and I actually rounded that rating up because I was definitely not the correct reader for this. So as a historian, I like to read books with historical aspects that are correct, and the title for this book on Goodreads actually says Shanghai Immortal, a richly told debut fantasy novel set in the jazz age of Shanghai. So that is exactly what I was expecting, and I did not receive that. So already that put me against the book. The language used in this book was incredibly modern, and it didn't sit well with me. I keep looking for where the jazz age aspect would come in, and there are some slight elements. There are historical places that the author has mentioned at the back of the book that I shouldn't assume it's a she, that they have placed into this world. But I just found that Lady Jing, which is the main character, to be incredibly sarcastic and snarky, and the development of the entire world just didn't work for me. I don't think I'm going to talk too much about it in what I didn't enjoy, because I will be transparent, there was some times where I skimmed the pages, but I just knew that this book wasn't for me. It fell flat for me because it wasn't representing what I was expecting. Because it was in the synopsis a couple of times, I assumed that this would be a bit more accurate than it is, and the language is the biggest boundary for me to actually get into it, so I didn't give it a fair shot, which is why I gave it 3 stars. My rating would have been 2.5 or 2. So the next book is Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. It is book 3 in the Love Light series, and I consumed books 1 and 2 I think last month, and absolutely loved it. I was going to hold off and read it as an ebook or a physical book, because I do know that the author is now picked up by a publisher and is getting republished in June, which we're in already. And so I was going to hold off and see if I could get a copy, but I was having a really bit of a slump around this period. After reading Happy Place, I didn't know what to read, and the books that I had been picking up weren't great afterwards. I DNF'd a book because I was just tired of it. So I needed something. I knew that I could trust in this world, and boy did it deliver. This is a 5-star read, and it is actually my favourite read of the month. So this follows Layla. She is the lovely character that's in the bakery in this series. She's been great in the last 2 books that I've read. I've enjoyed her as a side character, so it was great to have her own book, and this follows her down in luck on love. She's had some really stingy dates of recent, and she's surrounded by couples that are just so in love, and she wants that too and doesn't know where she's going to get that from. And then there's Caleb, who we already kind of know has had a crush on her through books 1 and 2. So it's no surprise to share that. And he also feels like he's no good to date. He gives too much of his heart, and he is a bit of a pushover, as people have told him. And so they come up with a plan together that they would do like sort of an experiment for a month. They would date each other and see where they went wrong in the dates. It was more so Caleb than anything else, and Layla would be sort of rating him to see where he went wrong. And their dates are really fun. There's some a bit silly dates and some experiences that come from the dates that were just a little bit silly, but overall it was just so delightful. And their relationship grows, and it's just really fantastic. I will say that this series has always given me a bit of a contrast with how wholesome and delightful it is, and then when the spicy, steamy stuff comes along, I'm always sitting there with my eyes wide open and going, gosh, I can't believe that just happened. And I didn't think we'd be able to top the greenhouse scene, if you know, in book 2. But I really enjoyed the physical aspects of this book and the romance that came from it. Really well written and really well done. Obviously, I listened to this, so there is a little bit of a frustration with the narrators. I've not enjoyed them that great, but like I haven't had a lot of time free, so to be able to listen to this book while I was doing a bunch of work was fantastic. I just so enjoyed myself, and like I said, it was my favourite read of the month. I gave it 5 stars. The next book is sort of like a seesaw. We go from something that was decent or really good down to something that wasn't so great. And there's another e-arc that I got. This is Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. It is book 2 in a Vine mess. And I gave it 2.5 stars. The first book in the series, Secretly Yours, I read as an e-arc and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I did have issues with that book, but it wasn't too major to be a problem, but in this one it was. So this one very much so felt ridiculous. The storyline follows August, who we met in the first book, and he is an ex-Navy SEAL, and his best friend's wish was to open a winery or a vineyard, and he decided, since his friend died, that he would honour that, and has absolutely no idea what he's doing, but decided to do it anyway, sunk all his money into it, and has nothing but poor wine, and he's not really doing well at all. So he's deciding to leave Napa Valley. And then the female character is the sister of the main male character of the first book, and Natalie is supposed to be a rich girl, but she's actually down on her own financial woes, and she's had a bit of struggles recently, and they enter into a marriage of convenience because she wants to get into her trust fund to start up a new business in New York, and he obviously needs a loan and got declined for it. So they get together, but it is insta love on crack. It's just so ridiculously fast. There's no development to the relationship, in my opinion, and there's a lot of smut. So if you enjoy a good, like, mindless romp, this book is totally for you. But I personally enjoy more plot than porn to my romances, and this one just wasn't for me, and I was let down because I really did enjoy the first book. I thought it was a great setting, and I thought it would be fun to continue on with, but yeah, unfortunately the second one wasn't for me, and the cringiness of the smut and just the character development was really far off for me, so that's why I gave it 2.5 stars. And finally, the book that really surprised me this month was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I was aiming for it to be 5, but the last 20% of the book just lost its steam, and I started to feel like it was getting a little bit tedious to read. But this one felt really fresh. Although it follows the same archetypes and tropes that Ali is so well known for. For example, Jack is the main male character, and you can best bet that he is massive in every way. And then Elsie is described as medium in every way. She's just a plain Jane. That's how she sees herself. And she's so little in his, so the little petite versus the massive giant is still there, and it is something that I've really struggled with this author. But the actual storyline felt fresh. It did not feel like a copy and paste of The Love Hypothesis, although those characters did show up in it, and I was quite pleased with that. So this follows Elsie. She is having a really hard time with finding a job that suits her. She's living quite frugally because she is a diabetic and needs medication to buy insulin. Needs money to buy insulin, and also, she's done her hard yards. She's a theorist in physics, and she can't find a job. So she applies for this job at MIT, and she and another person are going for it, and she really needs this job because she's sick and tired of having hardly any money, because she's actually doing something on the side, which is fake dating. She essentially gets paid to turn up at someone's side. It's not a sexual transaction. It's just simply to step in when someone, has perhaps a family that they cannot share themselves with naturally or honestly, and so she comes in as a stand-in date for those people for whatever reason that they might need someone on their arm for. And so she's doing that, and that's where she meets Jack. She's actually dating his brother, and she's not really one to have repeat customers, but she absolutely loves his brother, and so she's helped him out a few times. And Jack is also a physics experimentalist, I think is what they call themselves. Sorry, the terminology, I'm not in STEM, so I'm having a little bit of a memory blank on that. But essentially he works at MIT, and she thinks that he's going to sabotage her interview and getting the job. So there's this animosity level there of, you know, this guy is going to ruin things for me. I can't believe that I have to deal with this after struggling enough as is. And then there's the whole aspect of him thinking that she has been dating his brother this whole time when actually she hasn't been. So I won't say too much more because that will give away too much of the storyline. Obviously it does follow a similar formula, but it felt fresh to me. I enjoyed Jack. I love the level of respect and consent that he had, and the way that he saw Elsie, because a lot of her ways of being is actually like a chronic people pleaser. She will bend her own personality to be whatever the person around her wants. So she's great at observing, you know, where the deficit is and filling herself into that gap and hoping that people will just like her without actually being herself. And Jack actually sees her, which is fantastic, and I loved that aspect of the book so much. So I really enjoyed this book, and I'm glad that it surprised me because I actually only applied for it so I wouldn't have to buy a physical copy, since I was so let down by Love on the Brain. I was just hopeful that by checking it out first I'd be able to see whether or not to continue on with this author, and I think she's definitely one that I'm going to do so, even if there's no variety in her characters that way, because I did find that coming from reading Unfortunately Yours into reading Love Theoretically, that I prefer this type of storytelling. And if I continuously will read Tessa Bailey, there's no issue with reading Ali Hazelwood. So I actually found through reading both these books that I actually want to stop picking up Tessa Bailey books, which is quite sad in some ways, but I'm quite relieved as well because I have struggled with quite a few of her books recently, since the Bellinger sister books. I absolutely loved them, and I just haven't been able to find the next hit from this author. But with Ali Hazelwood, I kind of know what I'm going to get myself into. So let's talk about the books that I DNF'd really quick. There are 4 of them. The first book is Shards of Stasis by 𝓤𝓲𝓭𝓮. This is the second book, and I think the series is called The Soul Ascension. I read the first book in this series last year. It was her fantasy debut, and this is a New Zealand author, so I was really excited to support. I enjoyed the first book enough to want to continue on with the series. I kind of wanted to know what happened next, so I picked this one up as well. Unfortunately, I just really struggled to get back into it. I just couldn't find any interest in the world, and I just really struggled with some of the character actions, so I ended up DNFing it. I don't DNF e-arcs very often, but because this was through Book Sirens, who have an easier program to DNF with, NetGalley is incredibly harsh, and you don't have the ability to DNF without keeping your percentage down low. So I try not to do that with any book, and even with Book Sirens I would tend to try and read it, but thankfully they do have the option to know that sometimes books just aren't for people, and don't punish them for it. So I did DNF this book, and I do feel like it was just me that was having an issue and not the book itself. The next one I DNF'd was Poisoned by Jennifer Donnelly, and this was actually the book of the month. It is a Snow White retelling, and it is YA. I got through, I think, a good portion of it. I think I got up to at least 200 pages in, but to be fair, I was pushing myself to try and get through it because I really wanted to read it and not DNF another book. I held off for a few days on even thinking about DNFing. I thought I'll just come back to it, but every time I went to, I just didn't want to pick it up. So I knew that I didn't want to read it anymore. I just found the storyline to be great in some aspects, but then really poor in others, and I found the actions of the characters to be really weird, and the storyline to be really not my favorite. So unfortunately I had to DNF that one. It just was very YA as well, and I just couldn't bring myself to read it. I'd much prefer to pick something else up. So I listened to my instinct and did so with that. The next two books were for the letter generator prompt. So Johnny Be Good was my original pick because I have a physical book of it. I didn't last very long. I found that I did not like the world at all, and so I dropped the book and then went to the library online and looked at Libby and found a couple more books that had the J letter at the start. And I also DNF'd Just Haven't Met You Yet. I just found myself not vibing with the storyline and the way that the characters worked. So it was a bit of a month that I struggled with reading wise. I would definitely say that half the reason for so many DNFs and struggling to read was simply because I was not motivated and not enjoying myself. The books that I did enjoy, I enjoyed a great deal, and they came at the right times for me in my really extremely busy schedule. So I think that there were some amazing highs, but also very clear lack of interest this month. As you can see, if I scroll back to, sorry, turn back. Why am I saying scroll? If I turn back to here, that one, I also have to mark off that one and that one. So I had a lot of days where I did not read at all, and then barely could bring myself to pick up one book. There was like a couple of days where I'd read 2 or 3 things on the same day, or 4 in that one actually. But overall, yeah, wasn't a great time. And there's actually a book that I started this month that I haven't finished and I haven't picked up for days, and I'm reluctant to as well. I'm just not finding the story as compelling in the second book as the first. And also I did a really poor job of my TBR and my buddy reads. So it's very evident that I didn't have a great month, but the books that I did enjoy, I enjoyed a great deal. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today as we talk about the end of month reading update for May. And I will be back with a new video sometime very soon, where we wrap up the month of May together, and then we can move into June, which I can't believe it's already the 2nd of June when I film this. So crazy that the time is flying by as fast as it is this year. Again, thank you so much for spending time with me, and I'll see you in a new video. Bye everyone.